Hello everyone and welcome to a new video dedicated to our beloved Snoopy and the world of Peanuts. The daily strip of November 29th, 1950 presents us with an emblematic dialogue between Shermie and Patty. At the center of this scene we find a combination of subtle humor and interpersonal relationships, reflecting the unmistakable style of Charles Schulz. Shermie desperately seeks Patty's attention, while she seems completely indifferent to his attempts to win her affection. This exchange perfectly represents the world of the Peanuts, in which universal emotions and social dynamics are expressed with simplicity and depth. The uniqueness of this strip lies in the way Schulz manages to tell an entire story through just a few lines and minimal but significant visual details. The evolution of the relationship between Shermie and Patty in the early years of the Peanuts is interesting. While Shermie often tries to get noticed, Patty maintains a certain emotional distance, preferring to focus on topics she considers more relevant. Their dynamic is an example of the small tensions and misunderstandings that characterize many relationships, especially in the early childhood years, but which actually reflect aspects of the adult world as well. In the first vignette, we see Shermie in a pose that conveys a mixture of insecurity and hope. She leans slightly toward Patty, as if to reduce the emotional distance between them, and asks her a direct and intense question. "Don't you love me anymore, Patty?" The scene is simple but charged with emotional tension, with Shermie seeking confirmation in an almost vulnerable way. Patty, sitting on the floor with a seemingly indifferent look on her face, does not immediately respond. This vignette introduces a universal theme: insecurity in relationships and the need for confirmation. Interestingly, Schulz manages, with just a few lines and a sentence, to capture a complex dynamic. This type of relationship between Shermie and Patty is one of many he will explore in the early Peanut strips, where children address adult issues in a direct, almost ironic way. Even the dialogue reflects a sophistication that makes the characters much more mature than their apparent age. In the second vignette, Patty answers, but not in the way Shermie hoped. Instead of directly addressing the question, she changes the subject and asks how Shermie's comic book collection is going. This change of topic is a way of avoiding emotional confrontation and moving the conversation to more neutral ground. Patty appears detached, but her gesture could also be interpreted as an attempt to lighten the situation or evade a moment of vulnerability. Here Schulz again demonstrates his ability to portray complex dynamics. The act of changing the subject is a strategy we all use when we feel uncomfortable, and seeing it expressed in a 1950s comic strip is an example of the modernity of his approach. The reference to comic books is also a meta-narrative reference to the medium of Peanuts itself, perhaps meant to suggest the cultural importance of comic books at the time. In the third vignette, Shermie picks up the subject change and answers Patty's question. He tells her that he bought 4 more comics the day before, getting into the topic that Patty introduced. His response shows how Shermie is willing to adapt to the conversation in order to maintain a connection with Patty, even if it means shifting the focus away from his own feelings. Here the tone seems to calm, creating a sense of normalcy that contrasts with the emotional beginning of the strip. This moment of apparent calm sets the stage for the final twist. Schulz often uses these changes of pace in his strips to surprise the reader and add an element of unpredictability. In the fourth vignette, Patty completely breaks the previous tone and, with a smile, tells Shermie that she loves him madly. This declaration comes unexpected, both to Shermie and to readers. After the initial detachment and change of subject, Patty suddenly reveals a deep feeling, creating an ending that overturns expectations. Shermie is left speechless, and the entire dynamic between the two changes in an instant. This is one of the most brilliant examples of Schulz's subtle humor, the ability to combine emotion and surprise in just a few panels. Patty's declaration of love could be seen as sincere or as a way to end the conversation with a theatrical twist, leaving it open to interpretation. This kind of ambiguity is what makes Peanuts so fascinating and universal. Anecdotes, trivia, and insights. This strip is a perfect example of how Charles Schulz managed to make Peanuts a space to explore human dynamics in subtle and complex ways. Patty's use of subject change reflects one of the most common communication strategies in real life, and the unexpected ending underscores the unpredictable nature of human relationships. Shermie, one of the Peanuts' least remembered characters, was featured heavily in the early strips, but over time was sidelined to make room for other protagonists, such as Charlie Brown and Lucy. The mention of comic strips in the second vignette is an interesting reminder of the popular culture of the time. In the 1950s, comic strips were a central element of youth entertainment, and this strip could also be read as a commentary on the role of comic strips in everyday life. Moreover, the abrupt change of tone in the fourth cartoon is a demonstration of Schulz's mastery of creating surprising and memorable moments. This kind of humor, based on a mix of emotional realism and levity, is what has made the Peanuts one of the most beloved comic book series of all time.
If you enjoyed yourself, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and activate the little bell to stay updated, and see you next, friends.